Have you ever wondered how the fight against illicit substances came to be such a global concern? Drug abuse isn't a new phenomenon. It's been an issue that societies have grappled with for centuries. Over time, what started as a local or national concern has grown into a global crisis. As the problem scaled, so did the response, giving birth to the anti-drugs industry. This industry, born out of necessity, is a testament to international cooperation. Nations across the globe recognize the dire implications of unchecked drug abuse and trafficking. They understood that the fight against these substances was not a solitary battle. It required a united front, shared resources, and collective wisdom. From setting up regulatory bodies, implementing stringent policies, to initiating awareness campaigns, the world came together to wage a war against drugs. But remember, this was just the beginning of a war that has spanned decades and continues today. The anti-drugs industry didn't emerge overnight. It has a rich and complex history. The roots of the industry can be traced back to the 19th century, a time when society began to recognize the harmful impacts of unregulated drug use. During this era, drugs like opium, cocaine, and even heroin were commonly used in medicines and were easily accessible to the public. The first significant step towards regulation came in the form of the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906, which required accurate labeling of products containing certain drugs. This was the first major legislation aimed at controlling drug use, but it was just the beginning. The Harrison Narcotics Tax Act of 1914 marked a pivotal moment in the birth of the anti-drugs industry. This act imposed a special tax on all persons who produced, imported, manufactured, compounded, dealt in, dispensed, sold, distributed, or gave away opium or coca leaves and their derivatives. This legislation was the first real attempt to criminalize drug abuse, setting a precedent for future drug laws. The real turning point, however, came in the 30s with the establishment of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics in 1930. This was a game changer. It gave the government an agency specifically dedicated to enforcing the new drug laws and regulations, paving the way for the modern anti-drugs industry. The Bureau was responsible for enforcing regulations, arresting violators, and educating the public about the dangers of drug abuse. Over the years, various legislations were enacted, each one refining and expanding the powers of the anti-drugs industry. The Boggs Act of 1951, the Narcotic Control Act of 1956, and the Controlled Substances Act of 1970 all played crucial roles in shaping today's anti-drugs industry. As drug use became more widespread, the need for a more structured approach to combating it became apparent. The birth of the anti-drugs industry was a response to this need, a journey that started with the recognition of a problem and has evolved into a sophisticated network of laws, regulations, and organizations dedicated to combating drug abuse. The 1970s marked a turning point in the anti-drugs industry. This era was a pivotal moment in the history of the anti-drugs industry. In the year 1971, President Richard Nixon declared an all-out offensive against drugs, coining it as the War on Drugs. This wasn't just a battle against illicit substances, but a crusade against the societal issues that they represented. Nixon's declaration was more than just words. It led to the establishment of the Drug Enforcement Administration, or DEA, in 1973. This agency became the spearhead in the fight against drugs, coordinating efforts across the nation and even internationally. The DEA's mission was clear: to enforce the controlled substances laws and regulations of the United States. As the 1980s rolled around, the war on drugs only intensified. The focus shifted towards punitive measures, with harsher penalties introduced for drug offenses. The government was no longer just waging a war on drugs, but also on those who used, distributed, or manufactured them. The 1990s saw a continuation of this trend, with an increase in the number of drug-related arrests and incarcerations. The war on drugs had become a permanent fixture in American society, affecting millions of lives and shaping public policy. However, it wasn't without its critics. Many argued that the war on drugs was not only ineffective but also harmful. They pointed to the disproportionate impact on certain communities, the rise in drug-related violence, and the failure to curb drug use and addiction. Despite the billions of dollars poured into this war, drugs remained a persistent problem. The war on drugs was a complex and contentious issue, with no easy solutions in sight. It was a battle fought on many fronts, from the streets to the courtrooms, from homes to schools. And yet, Despite the best efforts of law enforcement and policymakers, the war on drugs was far from over. Despite these efforts, the war on drugs was far from over. In the 21st century, the war on drugs has taken a new turn. As we moved into the new millennium, the focus of this ongoing battle began to shift. Instead of punishing those caught in the web of drug abuse, there was a growing recognition of the need for prevention and treatment. This was a monumental shift in perspective. The early 2000s saw a surge in initiatives that aimed to educate the public about the dangers of drug abuse and to provide support for those who were already trapped. Rehabilitation centers started gaining ground, and harm reduction strategies were implemented, signaling a move away from the punitive approach of the past. However, this didn't mean that the problem was solved. Far from it. The opioid crisis, which hit its peak in the late 2000s and early 2010s, showed us that the war on drugs was far from over. Prescription painkillers, once thought to be a safe solution, turned out to be a double-edged sword, causing addiction and death on a massive scale. It was a stark reminder of the complexity of the drug problem and the need for ongoing vigilance and action. At the same time, we've seen some significant changes in the legal landscape. Cannabis, once demonized and outlawed, is now legal for medical and recreational use in many parts of the world. This shift has sparked a heated debate about the benefits and risks of legalization and has added another layer of complexity to the war on drugs. What does all this mean for the future? Well, that's hard to say. The war on drugs is a dynamic and evolving situation. New challenges and new solutions are constantly emerging, but one thing is clear. The war on drugs is not just about law enforcement anymore, it's about education, prevention, treatment, and policy reform. The war on drugs is continually evolving, and so too are the methods used to fight it. As we move forward, we must keep adapting, innovating, and learning if we are to make a real difference in this ongoing battle. Artificial intelligence is revolutionizing many industries, and the anti-drugs industry is no exception. The battle against illegal drugs is escalating, and AI is proving to be a valuable ally. It's like having a superpowered detective on our side, equipped with the ability to analyze massive amounts of data, spot patterns, and make predictions that would be impossible for humans. Consider drug trafficking. Traditional methods to combat this have often been reactive and labor-intensive. But now, AI can help us be more proactive. Machine learning algorithms can sift through vast amounts of data, including shipping records, social media posts, and financial transactions, to detect suspicious activities that may signal drug trafficking. This allows law enforcement to focus their efforts on the most promising leads and potentially disrupt operations before they even happen. AI is also helping us predict drug trends. It's a known fact that drug abuse patterns can shift rapidly, and staying ahead of these changes is crucial. AI models can analyze online data, from news articles to forum discussions, to identify emerging drug trends. These insights can help policymakers and health professionals prepare for and respond to shifts in drug use more effectively. And let's not forget about treatment outcomes. AI can support healthcare providers in predicting which treatments might work best for individuals based on their specific characteristics. This personalized approach could significantly improve recovery rates and reduce relapses. However, as promising as these applications are, they also bring challenges. There are concerns about privacy and civil liberties, particularly when it comes to data collection and surveillance. AI systems can also make mistakes, and the consequences could be severe in the context of drug enforcement and treatment. And finally, there's the risk of over-reliance. AI should be a tool, not a replacement for human judgment and empathy. The integration of AI into the anti-drugs industry holds great promise, but it also raises new questions about the future of the war on drugs. The anti-drugs industry has come a long way since its inception. From its birth, marked by a commitment to safeguard society from the perils of substance abuse, it has grown into a global entity. The intensification of the war on drugs brought about a new era, marked by rigorous efforts to combat illicit activities. As we moved into the modern age, the war on drugs adapted to the times, utilizing sophisticated methods to tackle advanced challenges. The most significant evolution in recent years is the incorporation of artificial intelligence. AI has brought about a paradigm shift, aiding in detection, prevention, and treatment efforts. It has revolutionized the industry, offering new avenues to combat the drug menace more effectively. As we look to the future, one thing is clear. The war on drugs is far from over, and the role of AI in this battle is still unfolding.